MSS Business Transformation Institute. I got Wayne Hagstrom, who's my sidekick, and we're never allowed to tell exactly what Wayne does because it's very secret, and we'd have to kill you if you knew. But there's something we can say, Wayne. We can say that you are on the board of the Southwest Alliance for Excellence.
That is correct.
You are a Baldrige examiner.
I am.
And today, this podcast is going to be almost entirely about that group and the Baldrige process. Can you tell me a little bit, before we get into it, what is Baldrige and what does it mean to be an examiner?
So Baldrige is a framework for an organization to use to start and keep on a journey of continuous improvement, with the goal that as they go through the process, they always become a better organization. And they do this through strategic planning, through a process of learning from their mistakes, and it's always leading them to be a better organization. Many people will talk about the Baldrige Awards, both at the regional level and at the national level, and that they're great for recognizing organizations, but the true value of the Baldrige criteria is the process of going through to make your organization stronger.
And we made the point before in our podcast that if your goal is the reward, then you're missing the point.
You are missing the point, and that's the wrong goal to have.
So we have two excellent people from the Southwest Alliance for Excellence. We have Karen Shepard, Executive Director of the SWAE. I'm going to now go straight to the acronym SWAE, because we sway here. Hi, Karen. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been with Southwest Alliance for Excellence for 10 years and have worked in nonprofits for over 30 years. We're a nonprofit organization about business excellence and improvement. So I have learned a lot and worked with some phenomenal people that are all about quality improvement throughout my 10 years with SWAE. So,
you know everybody in this state. Everybody knows you, I can tell you that.
I'm sure.
For better or worse. We also have Carl Herring. You are the chairman of the board of SWAE, and you're coming at this from the angle of experience.
Yes.
We're not allowed to say who you work for, but it's somebody who's extremely important and fantastic in this state. Tell us a little bit about the fact that you've actually been involved in this. This is something that's personal for you.
As a young engineer at a large company back in Dallas, Baldridge, we started talking about Baldridge, and I just thought, okay, here's another term of the year. You know, we had just finished ISO 9001, and then here comes Baldridge, and it's like, oh, okay, and lean manufacturing, things like that. Mm-hmm. But when Baldridge, we started down the journey, I saw real changes at my level, and that it really interested me. It was coming down from top management, but it was really making changes. They were really walking the talk at this point, and the changes were making my job better and much more enjoyable, and I was much more engaged with what I was doing and seeing real positive changes. So
what makes it different? So you mentioned a couple of things.
Okay.
That's Lean, Six Sigma, all of these. What makes this different from those approaches?
It's the Lean and Six Sigma is like there's a stopping point. It's like you want to lean things out, or Six Sigma, you want to make sure your processes are at a Six Sigma level. I'm going to go back to the journey. This is changing the way you do business, looking at the way you do business and making significant.
It's a bigger picture.
It is. It's bigger picture. Those other aspects can lend themselves to the success of going through performance excellence. But it's really looking at the big picture of how you're doing business and driving the entire business to excellence.
Yeah, we call it a systematic approach. It's a systems framework. It asks questions about your organization.
Okay, let me try a metaphor, and you can tell me if it's completely wrong, we'll cut it out. Okay. So if it's right, then, now we know. Some people look at Lean and Six Sigma as like taking parts of a machine and optimizing parts of those machine. And so if you fix a part, the machine will run slightly better. If you fix all the parts, it'll run better. Versus dealing with something that's a larger, complex system that you really can't take a piece of it and make it run better, you have to look at the whole system, and you have to look at the causality. It's hard to understand what the causality of a challenge is or something like that. You have to look at the whole system, fix the system in total, holistically.
Yeah, I was going to say it is a holistic approach because even like if you fix one part and it's still not going to make the car run, let's say.
We're talking about my car now because it's in the shop. I've been waiting for a gas tank for almost 2 weeks. So that's why Wayne drove.
But we're talking more about like processes that you're looking at within an organization that I'm not just going to fix what's going to help us here right now in my area, but how does that affect the downward flow of that process to the next group that is getting affected by that process?
So let's step backwards a little bit. How did Baldrige come to be? Because this is related to the U.S. government in a way, yes?
Yes. So back in the Middle 80s.
Back in the Middle Ages?
Yes, the Middle Ages. In the 80s.
For all you millennials out there.
Actually, U.S. leaders realized that American companies needed to focus more on quality and in order to really compete in the global market. And so at the time, there was a gentleman named Malcolm Baldrige, and he was Secretary of State to President Reagan. And the whole goal of what came out of this process, which actually was congressional, instituted by Congress, called the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Improvement Act of 1987, was really to enhance competitiveness in the U.S. businesses, especially because that was at the time when, Japan and Toyota were really coming of age and, high level quality, so we needed to make sure that the U.S. businesses, we could get more business coming to the U.S. companies and into the United States instead of going abroad.
Let's talk then about Southwest Alliance. So how did Southwest Alliance come to be, and how long has it been working, and how would people get involved?
Okay, so Southwest Alliance for Excellence actually started as an informal group of folks, and then it was incorporated just in the state of Arizona to help organizations in Arizona become better. Really, our mission is to empower organizations to improve their results and outcomes. The organization previous to what it is now was called Arizona Quality Alliance, and about 4 years ago, we started to help organizations improve in Utah and Nevada because they didn't have a specific organization to help them like we are. So we've changed our name to the Southwest Alliance for Excellence. And all of the programs such as ourselves throughout the United States, and there's about 30 of them, we're called the Alliance for Performance Excellence. Great group of organizations and people that share information, network, meet regularly, and shamelessly just steal others' best approaches so that we can help our organizations.
Share, not steal, it's share.
Steal shamelessly. Share.
I run an organization, let's say. If anybody was crazy enough to put me in charge of an organization, I'm running an organization, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I want to become a Baldrige Award winner. Is that the approach that I take? Or what's the reason that I come and start to work on this?
The reason organizations come to work with the Baldrige criteria is really about improvement. It's a journey. There's never an end to it. We talk about a process, and you have your approach and how you deploy it, and you have to have learning, and then you have to integrate that learning from that process to improve it. We have organizations that come, and it's not about an award, although there is some recognition. We talk about moving through the levels as they are comfortable, meaning, let's define who we are as an organization, what's important to us, and then we move deeper and deeper, into those levels. But what we do is kind of coach them along the way so that they can reach the highest level of improvements and results that they can, depending upon where they're at.
I actually had somebody come to me who was running a fairly major organization in Arizona, and that they actually said, we want to set out to win the award. That was their goal. Once we got a Baldrige examiner involved and they started telling them what they had to do to get there, it actually scared them away, because this isn't something you just take on in a whim. This is something that's going to impact, and if you don't mind commenting on maybe from your experience, this is something that's going to impact your organization from here on out. We're not talking about minor changes.
It's not flavor of the month.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
No, it's not, Dave. And as I was talking about earlier, even seeing the change as a young engineer, and I've been an examiner in Texas and then also in Kentucky, and I've seen organizations who've embraced it in those states change dramatically also. And it's, once they stick with it, once they learn the criteria and stick with it, it changes the business for the better. It makes the business more efficient. We talk about return on investment. There is a tremendous return on investment for these organizations who go through this process.
And this is a mindset change too, because one of the things we're going to be talking in the second half of this podcast is we're going to be talking to the Yuma Regional Medical Center team and their implementation of this. And what I've learned when I talk to people is this is a mindset change. This is something where you're actually changing their style of leadership. You're changing the way you expect people to behave in an organization when you get to certain levels. Is that correct?
And I think it changes, you're correct, but I also think it changes the culture.
Right.
It changes the culture of the organization, that everybody now is striving to be excellent. They're not just coming in, no one comes to work to do a bad job, but a lot of times people come into work just to do an okay job.
Is that true, Wayne? Nobody comes to work to do a bad job?
Not really.
But it does allow that culture shift where people are enthusiastic to come to work.
Right.
Because they know they're going to be allowed to do their best and to strive for excellence. And they'll be able to have the conversations with their leaders about, hey, let's do this. Let's give this a try because I think this will do better. And it creates that environment where they can make changes, positive changes, and try positive things.
It takes a very brave leadership team to go down this path.
This doesn't happen without extremely supportive leadership.
More so, but what I hear is you have to be willing to just let go some of your authority. You have to suspend your ego. You have to be willing to allow people to fail.
You have to be able to let go. And you have the vision, you show the vision, but you got to let go and let your people fly like a flock of Canadian geese in that V, how they're flying along. And
Has to be Canadian, or can they? Yeah.
Well, they don't have to be Canadian.
Okay.
They can be.
I mean, we
don't have it Arizonian.
We're in trade disputes right now,
Yeah.
So we will have to put tariffs on them if they're Canadian geese. So sorry.
They do use Baldrige in Canada, though, I just want you to know.
Oh, they do? Do they call it the same thing?
No, but actually there's, worldwide, there's over 200 countries, I believe, that use it.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So
In some form or another. They call it maybe something different, but it's Baldrige-based.
okay. So it's
In Canada, it's Baldridge, eh?
Baldrige. Okay. God. We're going off the rails now. Let's bring us back on this one. What are some common challenges that lead them down the wrong path?
I think a lot of times organizations think, we're so involved in our own work, we have our own work to do, and then they want us to do this Baldrige thing. Well, it's not in addition to. Using the framework is your work.
It's amazing how many times I run across leaders and they say, we want to do this transformation and change. And they say, but how are we going to be able to do that and also do our job? As if it's a separate thing. But leading change right now, I almost call it, say, this is just leadership. This is what you have to do to be a leader.
Indeed. You're a leader. You're not a manager. You got to be a leader.
Yeah.
And what I saw once was a wonderful application, but when I went on the site visit, it was just a wonderful application, and they hadn't really implemented.
Application is like a written application that they sent in.
Correct, the application for the Baldridge.
Okay.
So we scored it, sounded great, we went in, and they had not applied what they actually had said. And so nothing had changed in the business. So it was just kind of still mediocre.
They're thinking of it as a separate process instead of...
They were trying to win. They weren't going down the journey.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the process. So how do you start, and how does it go from there?
Well, really depending upon where you are, where the organization is at, what they're looking to achieve. If you look at the criteria itself, and it's like an essay test almost. There's many, many questions, and you have to respond to them based upon what you're doing in your organization. They can then, take a look at that and try to determine where should they begin. And so they can really start anywhere that they see fit. And what happens is they're going to submit that application to the Southwest Alliance for Excellence. We have a team of trained examiners that evaluate it. They go on site and ask questions to verify the things that they wanted to, or clarify any questions that they still may have that came from that application, and be able to then eventually complete a feedback report, which is the main deliverable, which is really the award, because it shows the organization where the examiner team saw where they're doing, where their strengths are and how they're doing well in certain areas, or where in some other areas they have opportunities to improve.
So then if I want to improve and I want to take on these things, but I need to do it for my business, can I get help? Or where would I get help to do that?
You would get help from Southwest Alliance for Excellence, because we will help and coach you through those lower levels of applications.
Okay.
Until you would reach the highest level, which is what we call our level 4, which is like the same national Baldrige application.
But you said, so this thing for me to clarify, so you said, but you're not going to tell them how to do it. So if I wanted to find out how to do it do I have to hire people in who are experts from this, or do I go to consultants?
We provide workshops on the criteria and any related issues and content that can help organizations through our examiner training, and sending somebody back into their organization with that knowledge to be able to almost do a self-evaluation. We in fact do have an electronic self-evaluation that organizations can do, which will provide for them a feedback report within a 2 to 3 week period of time. So we have different products and services that can help organizations. There are also Baldrige consultants that we use, and organizations, can avail.
When Baldridge says, or SWAE says they don't talk about how, they're not going to come in and prescribe a method to do this. They're not going to tell you how you need to do strategic planning. The criteria is going to say you need a strategic planning process that you can deploy throughout the entire organization. SWAE is not going to tell you how to do that. When you look at the criteria, there needs to be a method for continuous improvement. It could be Six Sigma, it could be Lean, it could be a total quality management approach. It's up to your organization to determine what approach you want to do to satisfy that need in the criteria.
Okay.
So the criteria is there to say, this is what you're trying to achieve, this is a framework to do it. The exact tool you use to do that is completely up to you.
It sounds like what it's really about is us taking this on as part of our culture.
Yes.
And learning how to do this ourselves, because we're going to be ultimately the ones who have to implement it and then continue it.
Yes.
I think there's a value to just doing that.
That's what makes an organization sustainable. If somebody else is doing it for you, it's not going to work. It's not going to continue. But if you're doing it yourself, that's what makes it sustainable.
That's so good. And we're going to talk to a group in the second half of this that did it themselves. It's the Yuma Regional Medical Center. We're going to have Dr. Robert Trenchel on with us. We're going to have Woody Martin, who's the chairman of their board. We're going to have Deb Aders, who's the chief nursing officer as well. And we're going to talk to them in the second half on how they applied it. I want to say thank you to Carl and to Karen for agreeing to do this. And this to me is an excellent introduction, and I really like the fact that we're going to follow up with application. There's real dollars here. Somebody had mentioned that earlier today, that the savings that institutions receive from this or the efficiencies they gain can be sometimes
Millions of dollars.
millions and millions of dollars, and or at least a large percentage of their operational costs. So whatever size organization they are. So really invite you to learn more about it, learn more about the Southwest Alliance for Excellence. We're going to be posting a lot of information connecting to that as part of this podcast and on the page that the podcast appears. So please follow it, learn more about it. You can only do good for your business. And Wayne, let's move on to the next group and talk about the application. What do you say?
Great, sounds good.